Trek Top Fuel or Fuel EX? What are the differences and which is the right one for you? Well, first off, as you can see, very, very similar looking bikes in terms of layout. And then, you know, in terms of the numbers, it seems pretty self-explanatory. The new Top Fuel here has got 120mm travel, front and rear. And then the Fuel EX here, 130mm travel at the back, 140 at the front. So immediately you're thinking, that's the trail bike. That's the more cross-country bike. And if you look on the Trek website, that's exactly the categorisation you'll see. XC downcountry, all-round trail bike. But having ridden both these bikes, it's really not uncut and dried as that.
In terms of geometry, while both bikes get the same 66 or 66.5 degree head angle, the Top Fuel actually has 10mm longer reach and it has a steeper seat angle as well. So it's the more progressively shaped bike. And both bikes get that little Mino Link flip chip on the Rocker Link to seat stay bridge that gives them the geometry change that I've mentioned there.
But, you know, definitely, you know, trail bike numbers all the way through. And you're even getting a big 2.6-inch Bontrager XR5 tyre on the front and then a 2.5 at the rear. So proper big burly rubber as well. But if you look at this from an XC point of view, again, you've got XR4 tyres on there. I mean, again, slightly faster rolling, but still a, you know, a 1010 gram tyre. That's 140 grams lighter than the XR5 over there, but it's still a burly tyre with plenty of tread on it. Plus you've got a 45mm stem, you've got a 780mm bar, and just little details on the frame as well. You've still got ISCG tabs on this cross-country, to put the quotation marks in there, frame. And just looking at the tube profiles as well, you've got a much boxier down tube on this fuel, on this Top Fuel, because that needs to make room for the storage hatch there. And you've got an oversized seat post as well, which kind of reflects the trend for longer and longer travel stroke seat posts, which obviously need to be stiffer to stop them just twanging around all over the place. So this is actually the more modern frame. It's got the internal storage, plus, zooming in on the shock there, you can see it's a trunnion mount shock, which means you've got bearings on the top pivot there, which automatically makes it smoother. Plus, it's a deluxe ultimate, so really top-end RockShox inline shock in there, and you've got extra adjustment there on the compression. And basically the damper's a lot more sophisticated, and it's that same shock on every RockShox equipped bike in the range, on the alloy bikes and the carbon bikes. So again, just look at it, you know, even the stays on this. This is not some waif-like cross-country featherweight, and that shows on the scales. This is 14.4 kilos in this medium-large size, which is definitely hefty for anyone who's likely to shave the legs and stick a number on. But if you're more the kind of cross-country racer who turns up in baggies with a peak on your helmet, then, and is really, really, you know, and has got fit just by doing endless laps of the local woods, then the way this bike rides, I mean, obviously there's 2 full live ride reviews of both these bikes now. This is a proper player. That rear shock, and even with the SID on the front, SID is such a capable fork now, even with the simpler rush damper in this. It's a 35mm leg, 120mm stroke, keeps it nice and stiff. You've got wide rims, you've got grippy tyres, and this bike is just an absolute rally ripper. Yes, it's heavy, but by God is it a joy to ride. And that stiffness and that more sensitive, more sophisticated shock really, really, I mean, it just plays up the whole agility aspect of a shorter travel trail bike. But on the other hand, you know, you have got the extra weight of that storage box, and, you know, your bottle space is a bit compromised on there as well. And do you really need ISCG tabs on a cross-country bike? I'm not so sure. So what you're actually getting with the Top Fuel is a really, really playful, agile, short travel trail ripper. You know, it sounds crazy to say when you're looking at a bike with a SID on the front and only 120mm travel, but having ridden the Top Fuel, the Fuel EX and the Slash, I'd say I think the Top Fuel actually be the more kind of naturally aggressive and kind of get stuck in bike out of all of them, which just sounds crazy. And obviously it throws an interesting light onto the Fuel EX, because although according to Trek, I mean, to be honest, there's a backstory to this, where if you look at the Trek figures on their website, they say this bike weighs 13.9 kilos, which makes it 500 grams lighter than this bike, which really put my head in a spin, and I kind of called them out in a couple of reviews, which I've since had to edit, because if you actually hang this off the scales, it's a kilo heavier than they claim. Well, let's be generous and say they just typed in the wrong number, and but it does show that you shouldn't always, well, you should very rarely believe what you read on the web, because actually it weighs 14.9 kilos, which, I mean, to be fair, it's not a bad weight for a alloy mid-travel trail bike, especially when you've got, you know, big tyres on the front. Like I say, it's 150 grams in each tyre on this bike, plus you've got a 34 fork with 140mm of travel, which is a lot heavier than that SID. And what's interesting is you've actually got exactly the same SLX and XT componentry on it, but because the frame is slightly older, it's a previous generation frame, this bike is actually cheaper than that bike with basically exactly the same spec. And the other difference is you've got a press fit bottom bracket down there, whereas on the Top Fuel you've got a threaded bottom bracket. So although that's theoretically the more old school traditional method, that's what we're seeing more and more manufacturers moving back to, simply because it's just easier to service, creaks less, lasts longer. It's generally a bonus all the way through. But as you can see, you've got a distinctly different main pivot position on the Fuel EX compared to the Top Fuel, and that affects the way that the bike pedals and the bike behaves over the bumps as well, even though they've both got that ABP concentric rear pivot on the suspension. Where it actually sits on the mainframe is quite different. You can see on the Fuel EX that's directly above there, whereas on Top Fuel is significantly further forward. So if this Top Fuel is the real player of the range, what does that say about the Fuel EX? Well, as soon as you jump on this bike, you can really feel the efficiency of this Fox reactive shock in there. Again, it's bushings top and bottom, so it's not got that bearing on a trunnion mount, so the shock is likely to feel crisper anyway, but you can really feel that initial platform from that digressive shock damper in there, which just gives it, I mean, and again, you know, considering these are aggro trail tyres, it just rolls really quickly. Even having the larger volume, even at 18 psi on this bike, it properly shifts. It's just a really clean, efficient and bright pedalling bike. You know, it's got that lovely shiny logo on the down tube there, but that's how it feels when you're pedaling it as well. Just very bright and crisp and efficient. And you've still got, you know, really nice features, and you haven't got the internal storage, but you've got these nice cable tidy features there. Just keeps everything really quiet. You've still got knock block, that's on both bikes, which limits the steering lock, so your controls aren't ever going to come round and damage the bars. And your fork crown isn't either, because it means Trek can use that really straight down tube on there. So while this doesn't get the oversized seat chute to get the oversized seat post in there, it's still a really precise, stiff feeling bike. So again, you know, just what might seem like very small and easy to miss details play out into surprisingly different feel and characters on the trail. That's your more crisp, efficient but slightly less forgiving bike, even though it's got more travel. This is the properly hunkered down rally ripper of the two. So I guess, in summary, the lesson is these are both brilliant bikes, but despite looking very similar on the surface, significantly different in the way they perform and the way they feel, and you can't trust the numbers. But that's the brilliant thing about, you know, events like this Wheelbase Big Demo Day, is it gives you the chance to actually ride the bikes and get a proper feel for them yourselves, not just trying to guess character from either other people's reviews or just from kind of comparing numbers on websites, because the way bikes are put together is way more important than just those numbers. Whatever some people might like to tell you, it's the character and the feel of the bike that's crucial. That's why I always try and do my live reviews while That's why I always do my reviews as live ride reviews, because that personality hopefully really comes across. So make sure you watch the live ride reviews of both of these bikes. If you're not already a subscriber, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any upcoming videos. Click for notifications so you get a ping in your inbox when there's a new video comes up. If you really like what I'm doing with the channel, please join my Patreon supporters who pledge a small amount every month, but which really helps the sustainability of the channel, and they get exclusive early and extended edits as a thank you. But massive thanks to those guys. Massive thanks to Wheelbase for inviting me to the demo day today. Thanks to Trek for letting me sneak these two fuels off to this picturesque riverside location here in Hampstead Forest. And well, thanks to you for watching. Hopefully you found this interesting. The specialized head-to-head comparison got a lot of interesting comments on it, so hopefully this will generate some interesting feedback as well. So get busy in the comments below and I'll try and answer all the questions I can, or if I can't answer them, then I'll get in touch with the designers and the crew at Trek, and they'll be able to really help us drill into the details. But for now, I've been Guy Kestevan on GuyKest TV in Hampstead Forest, talking about the differences between the Trek Top Fuel and the Trek Fuel EX.